So today we're welcoming in the great Jeff Stotts, the premier injury expert of the NBA, at least in my opinion. Compiles a lot of data, has been doing it for years. I've learned a ton from him. If you're ever interested in digging in deeper, definitely check out his website in Street Clothes. Jeff, thanks for being with us today. How are you?
Well, after that intro, man, I'm doing well. Appreciate you guys having me on. You know, no one likes to see me on camera because that means someone's hurt, but I appreciate you guys having me on nonetheless.
I saw there was I think it was 91 injuries beginning of this week. It seems like there's been an uptick. Is that abnormal? There's 450 players in the NBA, and almost a fourth of them are down now. Is that due to the abbreviated season, you think?
A little bit. Looking at the overall injury rates we have, they're not surprisingly different from where we've been in the past. Maybe a little bit. They're going to end up probably a little bit higher when you consider you got to prorate them for a 72-game season versus an 82-game season. We're a little bit higher than we were during the lockout shortened season, but I think we're going to come somewhere between a normal 82, a little bit higher than probably a normal 82-game season, maybe a little bit less than the last full 82-game season we had in that 2018-2019 season for total man games lost. But there's a ton of injuries active right now, and they seem to keep piling up. And you factor in all the health and safety protocol guys out as well, and that really is elevating some of the totals overall.
February 16th, you released your first batch of analysis on injuries this season. That was after every team had hit the 20-game mark. But one thing that was interesting to me was that most of the injuries were related to COVID-19. Now, obviously, some of that is a little bit obvious, but at the same time, you also noted that there were dips in certain injuries, like bone-related injuries, and I think it was muscle tissue injuries, right? Has that changed at all in the last, I guess it's been about a month or so? Yeah,
it's gone up a little bit. And the big thing I was worried about coming into the season was our stress-related bone injuries. Really, factoring in the fact that some of these teams didn't have very much of a time off. You're talking about altering the players' off-season workouts, maybe ramping up their activity level. Those have still stayed pretty low, which is encouraging. But now you're seeing some more acute fractures like LaMelo Ball, and you're seeing some more significant injuries, the prolonged absence of Anthony Davis, some of these other guys that are having these muscle and soft tissue related injuries that are bringing those overall totals back up. So while those first 20 games were encouraging, it looks like we're starting to hit more of a common, more regulated pace for sure.
Could you kind of take us through the difference between a stress-related bone injury and an acute fracture?
So acute fracture, you're going to be able to isolate the injury, like when it actually occurs. Like LaMelo Ball, he falls, he breaks a bone in his wrist, that's an acute fracture. A stress fracture develops over time. So when you are doing any kind of activity, your bones are actually constantly remodeling themselves. So new bone tissue is being laid down to make up for the stress that you're applying to it. And if the activity level that you're applying outweighs your body's ability to lay that new bone tissue down, it starts to develop cracks. It can't keep up, so you get a true stress fracture. That's why we see it a lot in runners. We see it a lot in people that suddenly jump up their activity level, which for the general population, we're seeing a lot more right now because for the past year, everyone's been sitting down, sitting behind a desk. And then all of a sudden now we're able to start running again. The weather's getting nice. And so we haven't been doing anything. So now suddenly these stress injuries start to jump back up. So that was my fear. We're going to see some of those, but fortunately we haven't seen quite as many as I expected. But again, we're starting to see that other injuries are filling in those gaps.
Obviously, LeBron's wasn't a fracture, but it's something that we could see right in the moment. That's exactly why it happened. With wear and tear and just like the shortened off season and all the crunch that we're seeing right now, can that impact those injuries, or are those injuries what you would consider more of like an isolated event?
So LeBron's, I would say, is more of an isolated event. It wasn't a non-contact injury. He definitely, you had someone fall into him, right? In LeBron's case, Solomon Hill hits him, and he has it's a weirder mechanism of injury than your garden variety ankle sprain. So usually we think about rolling the ankle outward. That's called inversion. That happens when you come down on a player, or even, you make a hard cut, that ankle dumps over. Those ligaments on the outside are stressed at that point. LeBron's, Solomon Hill fell into him. The inside aspect of the ankle was stressed, and the upper portion of the ankle was also stressed by that fall and that collision. And that's where the high ankle sprain term comes in. So it's the ligaments that cross the lower two leg bones. So it's a different joint altogether than what we think about when we think of an ankle sprain, which is why LeBron's injury tends to take a little bit longer to recover. You're talking about the overall integrity and stability of the ankle. So ensuring that those ligaments are nice and strong is going to be key to short-term recovery as well as his long-term health. After
Bron got hit, my first thought was like, I've never seen him respond to an ankle like that, right? You know, like usually he just kind of like sucks it up, ties it up, and walks off. Like he was on the ground rolling. And for me, it was like, you know, people were saying he's had two, you know, pretty significant injuries in the last 3 years. You know, he's becoming a human. I mean, at any point, would that probably have been the result in this particular incident? Is this due to Bron being 36 now?
It's going to play a factor, right? The wear and tear that guy has put on his body over his numerous seasons, plus you consider the fact that he's probably got, I think it's at least 2 or 3 seasons worth of playoff games on his body as well.
Unprecedented wear and tear.
Exactly. So it's just load. And but you combat that with this guy probably takes care of his body than anybody else in the NBA. LeBron is why I started my database, because I constantly heard about how awesome he was and how amazing he was because he never missed time. But that was removing a key aspect of it. LeBron didn't just avoid missing games. He still got hurt. And so I wanted to really look at his overall picture. What did his wear and tear look like? I have over 130 injuries logged for LeBron James. And you talk, that's everything from dislocated fingers, mild ankle sprains. He had a parotid gland tumor one off season he had to have taken off. He's had LASIK surgery. So he's had things done to him, but he's been able to play through them. And again, that's back to a testament to the player himself and how much he invests in his body, how much work he puts in, and how in tune he is with what's going on.
LeBron had a tumor? I was not aware of this.
A benign tumor in his jaw and in like one of the salivary glands. So he had it taken out. I believe it was while he was in Cleveland that first stint. You know, he hasn't been completely void of injuries. You know, they've occurred. He's just been amazing at playing with them and through them. With
KD going down and the calf messing up initially, and then it being the Achilles, and people say, you know, the calf goes first, and then prior to the Achilles. If that is a fact, is there a way to avoid it of being a rupture? Like, does it just need rest, or is that just an inevitability?
You got to just make sure you're taking care of the strength of the muscle. So the calf is a muscle complex made up of multiple muscles. Okay. And those muscles can join into that Achilles tendon. So the tendon is what anchors it to the foot and allows it to pull that foot. So we're all big puppets, right? Our muscles pull on our bones and move us like a puppet. Yeah. And so we need the muscle to be strong and not exactly. I always kind of, do this whole.
There you go. Okay.
Pull down, right? So it's the same with our calf, right? Like if our calf is healthy and strong, it can pull on that tendon. The question is the tendon healthy enough to withstand that stress? And so for AD, you've got to let the tendon calm down because he had that tendinosis, and then now he's also got the calf strain. So you got to make sure that scar tissue of the calf that's repairing that muscle site is healthy scar tissue. So it's starting to display the same characteristics of muscle tissue, right? You want it to be healthy and strong so that it is able to do what a calf is supposed to do. And again, you want to make sure that range of motion is good, flexibility is good. Those kind of go hand in hand. That strength is nice and good on both sides. So not just the affected limb, so that again, we're not putting any undue stress on an area that could lend itself to injury.
Well, thanks for coming on, Jeff. We really appreciate it. This was definitely some necessary perspective from me. I think because I was ready to come on here and be like, the NBA just screwed everything up.
They got it wrong. You know what I mean?
So we appreciate it. If anybody wants to learn more, obviously check out InStreetClothes.com. Is there anything that you want to plug for us?
I'm on Twitter, in Street Clothes too. I always gotta tell people when a player is injured, remember he's in Street Clothes. So that's where the name comes from. That's where the Twitter handle comes from. So that's where you can find me. I'm happy to answer any questions that I can for sure.